Hello friends, Pam here. It's been a little while. Today is July 21st, 2025, and I'm in a bit of a different setup here. This is actually the kitchen of the suite that is in our house, which is temporarily empty. Well, has been since we moved in, to be honest. But we will probably be filling it with a person here soon. Anyway, I thought it would be kind of a fun change up of location because it's pouring rain outside. And so anyway, today I wanted to talk about the idea of leaving a legacy. What kind of legacy do you want to leave? What kind of legacy do I want to leave? And it's a bit more of a serious topic. So hang in there. Let me know what you think in the comments about what our legacy should be and how we can avoid kind of destroying or damaging it before the end. I'm redoing this video actually because while I was filming the last one, the first time, I got a phone call. And I ignored the phone call and finished the video. But then when I saw who it was and called back, it was the housing department of the university that my son is planning to go to. And I had sent them an email saying, you knew that you didn't have anything available. And there was nothing posted about that. So you allowed us to pay for the privilege, $160 to pay for the privilege of you emailing back immediately saying there's nothing available. So I was, politely, but, pointedly calling them out on this and saying, is this really good practice? And I also was asking for my money back because it's not my first rodeo and I wasn't born yesterday. I don't know. Maybe I'm damaging my own legacy as we speak. But this lady, bless her heart, she was very defensive, and she said she'd been working there for 17 years, and this is the way they always did things. And the housing, opened up on September 15th of the year before, and that, first of all, that the mature student housing for someone a bit older, like my son, had been full for a long time, had been full since April of last year. But, no one had deigned to write that down, post it, or send an email. So they just let these what do you call them? I don't know, stooges, or what do you call gullible people? Keep applying, and every time they apply, they have to pay $160. So, how much are they just collecting this? So anyway, she said, your son should know better because he's 22. She said she'd been there, for 17 years. And she said, all these things basically to shame me. And I said, look, I know how this works. I said, and my son has lived outside of our home twice. And, I didn't tell her that part. But I basically just said, look, I've gone to university. My daughter's gone to college. We know how things work. And I just said, all I'm asking is for a basic posting when things are full. So you can't tell me at the same time that, you had posted things were full, because they didn't. You can't say at the same time that everything's been full since April. And, that he should know. How should he know? So that went pretty well. I stuck to my guns, but was still polite. But I didn't call her out for gaslighting me, because that's something that I recognize really well. And I just recommended that they communicate a bit better to students and parents about the housing. So anyway, legacy. I was thinking, at first I was, hung up the phone and I was like, oh man, I'm talking about legacy and I've just ruined my own legacy and I realized, no, I didn't. I was kind. But I was thinking about her talking about, her long history of working there. And I thought, how she's treating me right now is kind of ruining her reputation and her legacy in her job. So anyway, what do you think about legacy? Another event that's happened recently in the world, in the Christian world, is the passing of John MacArthur. And if you know him, don't know him, like him, don't like him, this isn't about necessarily that. It's just about the fact that he really wanted to pass on an awesome legacy of being like the best preacher and the author, and had his own study Bible, and he went right up to the very, very end as the preaching pastor of Grace Community Church. But he was in the hospital. He was at death's door, and no one would really admit it until it was done. And I find that really sad, because he had such an opportunity to pass the baton. He was running the race and, pass it to the next guy, pass the torch. But either his church or himself, or a combination of the two, wouldn't let that happen. And so, unfortunately, his legacy, which he is like so all about, and talked about how, his voice and his preaching would go out through the airwaves for years to come. And I don't want to dishonor his memory, and I do mourn for his family and friends. But his actual legacy is kind of a mess. And it's because of how he treated people. So my point here is, we can work all our lives on a business, or a church, or maybe writing books. And if we treat people poorly, all of that doesn't matter. It's how we finish, right? And unfortunately, John MacArthur treated a lot of people, especially women who were in abusive situations, treated them terribly, excommunicated Eileen Gray, and promoted and supported her abusive husband with no regard for her children, who, I'm sure are still suffering to this day with what their father did to them. And also with another young lady in the church, Wendy, who was being abused by her own father, told her she needed to basically get over it, and forgive him, and let him continue on in the church. So things like that are unfortunately what his memory, what his legacy has become, is how he treated others. And we all, make mistakes and treat others poorly. But we all have an opportunity to go back and say, I'm sorry. I was wrong. Please forgive me. And, turn around, repent, make a change. But I think people like John MacArthur are so set in their ways and have this kind of hard veil of pride that prevents them from admitting that they ever did anything wrong. And I'm seeing that a lot, unfortunately, with, in all generations, but unfortunately with some of the older generations in the church. It's very much about, we did everything right, and the next generation is just messing everything up. And not all churches and not all, people have this attitude, but I've definitely heard it. quite a bit. So yeah, your business might go under, your church might shut its doors, the books that you spent so many hours and years writing, as good as they might be, they might sit and gather dust on someone's shelf. And all those things will pass away, but how you treated people, that is a story that is going to get passed down. So a friend of mine on the internet, new friend, a wonderful lady named Debbie, she has a channel called Kentucky Life with Debbie. And if you watch this, thank you for sharing what you did this morning. And she shared a verse, Galatians 6:9. Do not grow weary in doing good, for in due season you will reap a harvest if you do not give up. And I'm quoting it from memory, so it could be like a couple versions blended there, but this idea of not giving up, it really encouraged me, because there are some situations, that I am feeling like just giving up. And it was really encouraging to think about that verse and think about this idea of legacy and think about passing that on and just continuing, because the harvest is coming. And sometimes we go through many, many, many years of drought, and we feel like we're putting in all this work and all this prayer and all this heartache and stress, and not really getting anything. You're not really able to gather any kind of harvest. But it just really gave me some hope. So thank you for that, Debbie. Her channel is called Kentucky Life with Debbie, if I forgot to say that. And anyway, why do so many people damage or destroy their legacy? I think it is pride sometimes. I think there's maybe a bitterness that can creep in, an inability to see things from a different point of view. I think of King Solomon, who had so much opportunity to leave an amazing legacy. And he's still thought of as a very wise man. And we read his books of the Bible and we, think what a wise man he was. And he asked God for wisdom, which is such an amazing thing. But what is he really known for? He's known for having all those concubines. He's known for, being very wealthy and having so many wives. And he's known for kind of dropping the ball at the end and not serving the Lord and allowing, idols and things to come into his life and into the kingdom. King David, he repented. And so we think of him more kindly. But usually when the name King David comes up, the name Bathsheba isn't far behind, right? He basically assaulted a young wife and killed her husband. Kind of hard to get over that. And he had to be confronted. And to his great credit, he heard the confrontation and he repented and he changed. Well, sort of. Anyway, just thinking about that, all the kings, presidents, Christian leaders, there's a lot of stuff going on right now with people's legacy being destroyed. Like, a band I used to listen to all the time and went to one of their concerts way back in the day. Oh, sorry, there's a garbage truck going by, so it might get a bit loud here. Anyway, I have the window open, so you'll probably hear it. What was I talking about? Giving up legacies and how easy that is to do. So this is going on a bit long, but bear with me. Another thing that might, raise the ire of some people watching this, and I hope not, but just something to think about. The senior saints in churches and the younger saints, the generations seem to be kind of warring with each other. And there's this disappointment. I'm disappointed, or the millennial generation is disappointed with the boomer generation, and the boomer generation is disappointed with the millennial and the Gen X's. We're not doing what they want us to do. We're not working hard enough. We're not, carrying on the torch. But the thing is, in order to carry on the torch, you have to be past the torch. And that's where the disconnect seems to be. There's not a lot of mentoring, discipling. Where there is, it is wonderful. And there's a lady in our church that does a Bible study and really pours into people's lives. And that's what we need. But instead of discipling, helping, showing the way, there's just this, you're not coming to the meetings. You're not going to prayer time. You're not helping with the work bee at the church. There's all these things. You're not making the meals for the funeral. A lot of times people, the younger generations, just, they don't know about these things. They don't know how to get involved. And rather than just, shaking our head and saying, oh my, wow, they're just lazy or they don't want to help, we need to invite them in. We need to help them. And also to reconsider that maybe these things that we think are so important, maybe they're not. If Jesus isn't needed, if the gospel isn't needed to perform some of these services, what are we really doing? Could a community club do this even better? And so even though there is a role for the church, I understand in funerals, in weddings, in community outreach, all of those things, but sometimes we need to think of it in a different way and realize that the volunteer workforce of women just isn't really there anymore like it used to be in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, where a lot of women did stay home, were privileged to be able to stay home. Their husband could earn enough to provide for the family. That's rarely the case now. And with all of the different things that we have to do with our kids and in society in general, there's just not a lot of free time to do things. And especially if you don't know about it or you're not invited in, you don't know how to do things. I just think this shaming of each other is kind of damaging the legacy of the older generations. And no matter what we try to make our legacy, it ultimately is about how we treat people. What we say to them matters. Our words resonate through the years. And yeah, if you've said something or if I've said something that's hurt someone, you really need to make it right. And not just push forward with this kind of brazen, I'm always right kind of attitude. So I hope that isn't too miserable and confronting, but I think it's important to say, what kind of legacy do we want to leave? Because it's made up of all the little things we do every day. And it's made up of how we persevere and do good until the end. And if we have done a lot of good, but now we're just kind of throwing it all away, our legacy is not going to be what we want it to. So, stuff to think about. This has gone on a bit long, so hope you've hung in there. Thanks so much for watching, and please hit the like and subscribe if you're interested in some of my random thoughts. I'd love to show you a little garden tour again outside, but it's extremely wet out there, so we'll save that for another day. Anyway, let me know what you think in the comments, and have an awesome rest of your day. I'll see you again soon. Bye.